He had no name that stuck, only the kind people threw at him like pebbles. Mutt, nuisance, scram. In his own memory, though, there was a ribbon-blue fragment of a beginning. Hands at once tied a bow around his tiny neck, a voice that promised he would be loved, a kitchen that smelled like apples and soap. Those were far-away things, like a summer scene from winter. The ribbon vanished, and so did the hands. What stayed was a body that learned to sleep under stairs when the wind came hard off the river, to lick raindrops from gutters when the bowl stayed empty, to keep a certain distance from boots. Yet his tail still remembered how to wag without permission, and his chest still remembered how to hold an ember when the night had no fire. He haunted the margins of a small town, Maple Street, the cracked sidewalk beside the laundromat, the alley behind Klein's groceries. People learned his outline like a harmless landmark. He never bared his teeth. He never begged too close. He flinched at shouting, then returned at dusk to watch windows change color from gold to sleep. There was one house he kept circling back to, the old one with the crooked porch and the wide, tired windows, the one that breathed like a mother. In that house lived Claire and Matthew Bennett and their baby, Lily, whose laughter came through glass like bubbles of fountain. The dog, no name, Shadow, lay beneath the hydrangea most evenings and listened to the soft thunder of family, plates, lullabies, the hum of a dishwasher. Every so often Lily would press her hands to the window and squeal, and the dog would lift his head as if answering a roll call. He called himself nothing, but if the night had a tongue, it would have called him Shadow. Once, a crust of bread tumbled from Matthew's grocery bag, and Shadow, quick as a prayer, darted in and out. Claire startled, then laughed, then closed the door with a gentler hand, as if she had remembered something about mercy. After that, the Bennets sometimes forgot a heel of toast on the back step or a bowl of water near the porch chair. The offerings were irregular and unclaimed, as if kindness would mean less if a name were attached. But Shadow understood the grammar of it. Kindness is a light you leave on, even if you don't announce it. Winter came with its tin breath. Shadow grew thinner, but he did not leave Maple Street. He made a den beneath the porch. He ran off other strays with a low warning rumble. When a teenager kicked at the Bennett's gate, Shadow stepped into the yard light and stared until the boy muttered an apology to no one and left. Purpose warms a body, even when blankets are scarce. On the last Monday of November, the air wore a wet cold that promised nothing good. Claire returned late from wake, cheeks pinched pink, Lily a drowsy bundle in her arms. Matthew kissed the baby's forehead, set a pot on to boil, turned the oven dial for cornbread. The heater coughed itself awake. The porch light hummed. In the shelter of the hydrangea, Shadow curled tighter. It was pricked at the familiar orchestra of home. No one saw the frayed wire behind the stove shiver like a rattlesnake. No one heard the whisper of a spark falling behind the baseboard. Fire, like love, often begins in secret. It started mean and small, a licking ember behind scene too busy to notice. It found dry wood. It learned to climb. The oven exhaled a breath that wasn't on the recipe. Matthew, chopping onions, coughed and checked the window for the neighbor's chimney. Claire, swaying Lily on her hip, hummed a lullaby about a boat on a dark sea. The smoke alarm was still a minute away from its courage. Shadow smelled it first. Smoke is a color in a dog's mind, a taste. He rose, stiff-legged, and came out from under the porch. The kitchen window glowed brighter than it should. He whined once, warning to no one who could understand, and trotted to the back step. The alarm woke up screaming. Everything that followed happened at the speed of panic. Matthew snatched the pot off the flame. Claire yanked open a cupboard for the extinguisher and found the shelf where it used to be. Smoke leapt for the ceiling. Somewhere, like a pulled thread, fire ran behind the wall. Lily, startled, began to cry. "Out!" Matthew said hoarsely. "Now!" He flung open the back door, and a sheet of cold fell into the kitchen. Claire clutched the baby and stumbled into the yard. Matthew grabbed his phone, a jacket, nothing that water could not replace, and followed. On the porch steps, Claire felt the air swell with heat, so orange bloom in the kitchen like a terrible sunrise. Matthew spun, checked his pockets, then his face broke into a shape Shadow recognized from the alley. Realization. "Keys! The car keys. I left them on the counter." He took a step forward, then reeled back as the doorway breathed out fire. "Don't," Claire said. "Don't." They coughed, turned their faces to winter, listened for a siren that wasn't yet on the road. Somewhere in the rush of bodies, in the spilling out of seconds, Lily's knit cap, yellow, with a pom-pom, tumbled from Claire's shoulder to the porch, and Lily, with a baby's stubbornness, tipped toward it. Claire clutched, adjusted, caught her, kissed her hair, and did not see the small mitten that slipped free, or the door that the wind nudged open, or the machine of chance that sometimes moves briskly, mercilessly, forward. For a moment they were all outside. For a moment the story held. Then smoke swirled like a hand, and Lily, in the horizonless way of small children, twisted, reaching for the glinting palm, wriggled out of the blanket's pinch, and toddled 3 uncertain steps toward the threshold that light had turned to her mouth. "Lily!" Claire's voice broke. Matthew lunged, but heat does not negotiate. A ribbon of flame unrolled across the floor like a warning. He threw his forearm across his eyes. "I can't." Shadow moved. Later, they would say they didn't see him until he was already inside. Later, they would say he was not a dog but a streak of river dark, a decision with legs. Shadow took the 2 porch steps and won. The smoke bloomed at him like a punched pillow. He ducked his head, launched his body through the low door slice, and disappeared into a room the color of a nightmare. Inside, the air was a stew of heat and doubt. The house groaned like a ship. Shadow knew fire from the alleys, the cold fires in barrels that men held their hands over, the sharp taste of smoke. This was older, angrier. He kept his belly low, where the air was troll. He found the kitchen floor by memory of scent, past spilled onions, past a chair that had fallen. He found the little thing that was all heartbeat and fear, the tiny squeak that meant Lily. She stood 3 paces inside the line of bad light, mittenless fists clenched, eyes wide with a question no one could answer. Shadow made himself small, small as a promise, belly to tile, nose to Lily's socks. He didn't bark. The smoke would have stolen the sound. He pressed his shoulder against her shins, toned, nudged her with his neck toward the rectangle of winter. She took a step. He took one with her. Somewhere timber cracked. Somewhere something fell. He licked her fist, gathered the trailing edge of her blanket carefully in his teeth, and pulled like he pulled a rope in another life. At the door, the draft pitched smoke across them like a cape. The blanket dragged heavy, but the baby's feet found cold porch wood. Outside, someone was screaming. Shadow lowered his head to drag the last of the blanket over the threshold, and then heat clawed his flank with a bright white paw. Pain is a kind of bell. It rang him from nose to tail. He did not let go. He backed, hauling blanket, hauling baby, out onto the porch and into a slit of air that wasn't trying to kill them. Claire fell to her knees, arms out, voice leaving and returning to her throat in torn pieces. Shadow released the blanket and, forgetting his manners, placed his nose against Lily's stomach to be sure it still moved. It did. Lily began to cry in that enormous, relieved way babies have, which meant the world had a second chance to be kind. Matthew grabbed the blanket edge and dragged it the rest of the way. Claire gathered Lily into herself like a lost decade returned. And only then did they see the dog, not just a dog. Their dog, though they'd never admitted it, stand crooked in the yard light, one side of his coat singed to a dark curl, his breath coming thin, his eyes black-buttoned bright and bewildered. "Shadow," Claire said, and her voice discovered his name as if she'd always known it. "Oh, God! Oh, sweet boy!" The house coughed a great, black sigh. Sirens came eating distance. A neighbor dragged a hose that felt like a joke against a dragon. Matthew shrugged out of his coat and threw it over Shadow's back. The dog flinched, pain, or surprise, and then leaned into Matthew's knees in that primitive, ancient pose that says a pack is a circle and I am in it. The fire department bullied the flames back into wolves and then into ash. A medic checked Lily with cool hands and businesslike relief. No burns, light smoke inhalation. Keep her warm. Claire kept one hand on the baby and the other on the dog, fingers trembling as they combed through his singed fur, as if counting him back from the brink. "We need a vet," she said. "Right now." There's a tone a mother can use at parched traffic. At Northside Animal Clinic, the fluorescent lights made everything look too honest. Dr. Patel, steady, unflappable, wool-soft voice, met them at the door because dispatch had already called ahead. "We're ready," she said, as if good news was simply a muscle you could strengthen with practice. Matthew carried Shadow, who endured it as a proud man endures a stretcher. They signed forms with hands that couldn't decide whether to shake or pray. Lily slept against Claire's chest, breath sweet and holy. In the exam room, Dr. Patel's team did the work they'd trained to do: cooling gels, saline flushes, pain meds, and for fluids, oxygen at a gentle flow. The burn on Shadow's flank was deep but clean, a scallopsy of angry flesh that would scar. There were singed whiskers and a blistered pad. There were no broken bones. "Lucky," murmured a tech, and the word felt poor beside what had happened. "Brave," corrected Dr. Patel. "Bravery is luck you choose." They left him there because love includes leaving things with the ones who can help. Claire kissed Shadow's head, just above his eyes, weighing gratitude and guilt in the same breath. "We'll come back the minute they let us," she promised. "You're coming home." Home. The word had furniture in it. The fire inspectors found the cooked wire and made their notes about old houses and newer codes. The Bennetts slept that night at Claire's sister's place, 4 blocks over, on a couch that held them as if it knew their particular grief. Lily slept between them, a little starfish, one hand flung open like an offering. Matthew woke twice with his heart sprinting, the ghost of heat at his back. Each time, he said the dogs knew certain name into the dark, Shadow, and the edge softened. By morning, half the town knew the story. News travels fastest when it carries a miracle on its back. At the bakery, the woman behind the counter cried into the cinnamon sugar. At the hardware store, Mr. Lambert set out a coffee can with a handwritten label, "For Shadow, our hero." A local reporter called. Then another. Klein's Groceries promised a year of dog food. Mrs. Alvarez organized a donation page that bloomed with $10 thanks like clover. At the clinic, Shadow slept under the influence of chemistry and mercy. When he woke, he discovered a world that smelled like clean and safety, and his body felt heavy in a way that did not mean hunger. Dr. Patel checked his eyes and said, "There you are," and Shadow recognized the cadence if not the words. "You are seen. You are permitted. You are valued." Claire visited in the afternoon, Matthew in the evening. Both brought Lily. Babies have a way of owning rooms they enter, and Lily owned that one, chattering nonsense with perfect authority. Shadow lifted his head when she laughed, groggy tail tapping twice. The second time, Lily reached her hand through the kennel door and offered him Solomé. He accepted it, carefully, and the nurses pretended not to wipe their eyes. Healing is a ladder with odd rungs. Some days, Shadow climbed 2 at once. Some days, he stayed put and let the day come to him. Pain faded to a background hum. The blistered pad learned how to be a foot again. Dr. Patel taught Matthew how to change a dressing without turning love into pity. Claire learned the right pressure hand for a dog who flinched at sudden movements. Lily learned to say "sure," "though," and then exultant, "Shadow," the D riding out of her mouth like a drumbeat. On the 6th day, Dr. Patel said the word that rearranged the Bennett's furniture: discharge. They brought him home in a borrowed SUV because the old sedan smelled too much like a past they weren't living anymore. The house wore a bandage of plywood and caution tape, but it was still a house. Friends had been in and out, mopping, sorting, setting aside anything that could be saved. On the porch, the hydrangea held a fringe of ash-like frost. Matthew carried Shadow across the threshold because sometimes a ritual is a bridge you need. They had prepared a bed by the couch, a water bowl at a respectful distance, a stack of dog blankets that made Lily squeal as if it were Christmas. Shadow turned once, twice, a sailor finding a new berth, then lowered himself with a pleased sigh that sounded like a truth being told. Claire knelt, placed a palm lightly on his ribcage, felt the steady engine in him, and the knot that had taken up residence in her throat loosened an inch. "Welcome home," she said. "Welcome home." That night, when Lily cried at 2 a.m., Claire rose and found Shadow already awake, head up, eyes bright, as if his watch had never ended. "Not your job," Claire whispered, and Shadow considered this theory with some skepticism. He lay back down, but only after Lily resumed the soft, snuffling breath that meant peace. Weeks moved the way winter moves toward its decision. The Bennetts rented a small apartment while repairs began, 2 rooms and a kitchen with a cheerful linoleum that lied about its age. They did not hesitate. They signed the pet clause with a pen that felt like a wand. Shadow learned the pattern of a family the way good men learn recipes, by repetition, by listening. He discovered the dignity of a collar that belonged to him and the gentle weight of a tag that clicked against a bowl labeled Shadow in Lily's crooked marker. He tolerated baths like a saint, wore his scar uncertainly for a while and then like a medal. On Sundays, they walked to the park where children conquer small kingdoms in mulch. People crouched to pet him, to say what humans say to heroes. Shadow accepted these overtures seriously but reserved his full-body lean for his pack. Sometimes, when Lily napped in the stroller, Matthew and Claire held hands in a silence that had the shape of prayer. The three of them would regard Shadow with a kind of wonder usually saved for stars. "He chose us," Matthew would say, "before we knew to choose him." In February, the local paper ran a feature with a photograph that made strangers tear up at bus stops. Shadow on the couch, Lily asleep with her cheek on his flank, her pacifier askew, his eyes half closed, sentry at ease. The headline read, "Family Found." The article mentioned the donation fund, and the town gave again. The contractor knocked $2,000 off his estimate and scowled as if he'd been forced. The fire marshal scheduled a free safety talk at the community center. The world, briefly, learned how to be better, but adversity is sticky. A letter arrived from the insurance company with language as generous as a fist. An old acquaintance muttered that it's just a dog. A neighbor complained about barking that never happened. Some days Matthew's hands trembled when he thought of the heat. Some nights Claire woke believing she smelled smoke and could not sleep until she touched both baby and dog and counted to 60 twice. When the bad hours came, Shadow did what dogs have done since they trotted into our caves. He lay close enough to be a fact and not a question. He learned that Matthew's quiet meant stay, that Claire's pacing meant interrupt, that Lily's outstretched hands meant present yourself for inspection and kisses. He did not cure their fear. He companioned it until it grew bored. Spring took the town apart and put it back together in green. The Bennetts returned to a repaired house that wore a new smoke alarm like a crown and a kitchen that had learned its lesson. At the threshold, Claire paused, Lily on her hip. "Home," she said. The word deepened now. Its basement dug. Shadow went in first, because sometimes the bravest goes first. The first night back, a thunderstorm stumbled across the river. The lights flickered, then held. Shadow, who remembered the sky's rude surprises from alley days, stood and moved to the window with the calm of someone who knows what thunder is and what it isn't. Lily pressed her palm to the glass beside his head. Lightning introduced itself and left. The family watched it go. Summer arrived like a miracle that had learned some manners. Lily learned to run in a zigzag that made adults laugh and dogs delighted. Claire found a deeper kindness for herself. Matthew fixed a birdhouse and cried only a little when a wren moved in. On a Saturday in July, the town hosted a Heroes' Day at the park. There were first responders and shiny engines, plaques and speeches, a grill the size of a small car. Near the end, the mayor waved a hand for quiet. "We teach our kids that heroes wear uniforms, and that is true," she said, her voice steady and proud. "But sometimes heroes wear fur. Sometimes they sleep under porches and go unnamed because life has been unkind. Sometimes they make a decision that saves us. Today we thank one of those." She lifted a simple collar on a cushion, new leather, brass tag engraved with Shadow, and nodded to Claire. Claire bent, fastened the collar. Lily clapped as if the world had reached a good part. Shadow stood with the solemn tolerance of a prince being fussed over and accepted a biscuit the size of his head. The crowd laughed and then, as if one organism, sighed. The band played the sort of song that makes grandmothers dab their eyes. Even Mr. Lambert looked at his boots and cleared his throat. In the dusk, when the grill smoke had gone from sweet to memory, Matthew watched his family, wife, daughter, dog, fall asleep in loose, contented heaps, and he thought about the small, 100-times-a-day choices that had carried them to this particular patch of soft earth. He thought of the ribbon in the long-ago kitchen, of alleys and hydrants, of a dog who learned to trust again, and he said a thank you into the ceiling for whatever stubborn mercy insists on second chances. Autumn visited and stayed for tea. Lily learned letters and began to narrate the world with confident errors. Shadow carried himself with the gravity of someone both ordinary and essential. Sometimes he limped a little when the weather changed. Claire kissed the sky and told him it was handsome, which, to be fair, it was. On the anniversary of the fire, they lit one candle on the porch and then blew it out together, Shadow included, by virtue of proximity, to say we remember and also we have moved beyond remembering into living. Toward the end of that second year, a new family moved onto Maple Street. A couple with a boy who didn't speak much and watched the world from behind a cap. Shadow, diplomat, sat at the property line and pretended to be uninterested. After a week of this etiquette, the boy crossed the grass and sat within arm's reach. They breathed together for a long while. Then the boy took off his cap and placed it gently on Shadow's head. "Dog," he said, and it was both a label and a benediction. Shadow wore the cap until gravity won. The boy laughed, a sound like cold water over stones. Claire, seeing from the kitchen, pressed a hand to her chest because some miracles arrive without sirens. On a winter morning glazed with frost, Shadow rose before the sun. He did that sometimes, as if meeting a friend. He padded to Lily's door, for now, and a morning song in human form, and lay down, facing the hallway, guarding a child who no longer needed guarding every second and always would. In the quiet blue, Claire woke and stood in the doorway, watching the two of them breathing in unison, and she whispered, not wanting to wake the day too fast, "Family," as if the word could break if handled roughly. Shadow's eyes flicked open. He didn't move. He knew a ritual when he met one. He closed them again and slept with the contentment of kings and the humility of servants. If you asked the town where the miracle lived, they would point without thinking. That house with a porch light that always seemed a little warmer. If you asked Claire or Matthew or Lily, they would not say it lived in the scar on the dog's flank, though they would touch it sometimes as if checking a talisman. They would say it lived in the moment a creature without a name decided to be a name for them. They would say it lived in the way the air changed when Shadow walked into a room, or the way nightmares lost their footing when he leaned his shoulder into a shaking hand. If you asked Shadow, he would not know how to answer in words. He would answer the way he always had, with presence, with watchfulness, with a body that interposed itself between danger and someone smaller, with a tale that declared, in all weathers, that joy is not a rumor, with sleep at the threshold and wakefulness at the right time, with a kind of patience that teaches people how to be kind. On an evening when the sky had run itself pink and the first brave star crouched over the water tower, Lily tossed a red ball across the yard. It bounced off the porch step and rolled toward the hydrangea, toward the old den. Shadow trotted after, unhurried, picked up the ball, then paused with his nose in the shrub's cool shadow, much the way a man pauses when he crosses a street where he once chose to live. He placed the bowl carefully in Lily's hands and let her wobble it away again. He stood, listening to the house breathe, counting the heartbeats inside it, and he understood, because dogs understand the important parts, that he belonged where his listening mattered. He lay down on the porch as the porch light woke. Behind him, Claire turned a page. Matthew laughed at something on the radio. Lily sang the alphabet with 2 extra letters. And the house, the repaired, forgiven, beloved house, carried the sounds away a good boat carries a family across a dark water toward morning. Shadow closed his eyes. He did not dream of ribbon or alleys. He dreamed of the door that opened and the blanket he pulled, of the hands that found him and named him, of a small cry that subsided against a heartbeat, of the moment when a nameless life became a member of something larger and finally, at last, home. A week after the fire, when the Bennett's house still smelled of ash and fresh lumber, a reporter from the local TV station knocked on their door. She had a practiced smile and eyes that betrayed genuine awe. The cameraman's lens swept across the blackened walls, then came to rest on Shadow. He sat calmly on the rug, wearing his new collar and a bandage on his side, yet carrying himself with quiet pride, as if he understood his role in the story. "Is that him?" the cameraman whispered. "That's him," Claire said, her voice trembling. The reporter lowered her microphone. "Shadow saved our daughter," Claire told the camera. "He ran straight into the flames. Without him, we wouldn't be holding Lily today." Lily, perched on Matthew's lap, rested her small hand on Shadow's ear. The picture was broadcast across the state that evening, a baby alive because of the loyalty of a dog once called a nuisance. By morning, phones at City Hall rang nonstop. People wanted to donate money, offer food, toys, or simply say thank you. The town stirred to life in a way it hadn't for years. At the bakery, the clerks wore pins that read, "I red hot has Shadow." At the library, children painted pictures of the dog with big eyes and a golden heart. Even old Mr. Holloway, known for cursing at kids and stray dogs, approached Matthew at the farmer's market. "He's not just a dog," the old man muttered. "He's one of us. Keep him safe." In the park, a new plaque appeared on a bench. "In honor of Shadow, the hero who saved little Lily and reminded us that true loyalty has no price." Seasons passed, and Lily grew alongside the dog who had saved her. She learned to walk by clutching his fur, wobbling from one step to another while he patiently stood still, tail wagging in encouragement. When she fell, he nudged her gently back to her feet. Her first clear word was not mama or dada, but shortao. Every time she called, he answered with a look that said he understood perfectly. He appeared in every family photo, his scar visible but his eyes shining with calm devotion. On birthdays he tolerated party hats, on holidays he sat by the tree, and in parks he followed her at just the right distance, guardian and companion. When Lily started school, Shadow waited at the gate each afternoon. Neighbors would shake their heads, marveling. He's getting older, but his loyalty never fades. And there he was, tail wagging, the first sight Lily had after long days away from home. In her school drawings, she always wrote the same words. "My best friend is Shadow. He saved me when I was a baby. Now I save him from being lonely."